If you could take like 2 minutes, just a quick introduction of yourself and what you do, I'd be really interested to learn about you, Johan.
All right, so I work at a company called Ventla, where we deliver a platform that is, well, the primary product is an event app. And we'd like to say that we want the event app to be a companion for the participants so that they are, well, so that they have a way of contributing, of taking part in an event. And we want them to be informed and be served of the information that is for them and for the moment that they're in.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's like really interesting. I would love to see that in action because that's what kind of like connected us over that post, a bit similar to what you were talking about, and why it really resonated with the event space you might be seeing is in boom. Events are making or regaining its name. Like I'm reading a lot of generic posts out there, and yours really stood out because it kind of digs into the psychology side we don't really think about. And what intrigued me especially was the need for people to contribute, right? Rather than just sitting there smiling and nodding. So I'd love if you could just elaborate a bit on that. What do you think makes a good setting feel safe versus inviting or forcing that participation?
Yes, and I think, like you say, I think it comes down to a basic need, and a lot of what you said in the time of AI, this will be increasing. That we look for something that is authentic. We're looking for real human to human connection. So historically, events have been used to for many different reasons, that you want to send a message out, that you want to show off a new product or something. But I think people are increasingly finding events as a way of connecting and forming a long-term relationship with people, so that you get an audience that are the type of Apple fanboys, fan people. They will buy an Apple phone just because it's Apple. They don't really care that it's not, maybe it isn't the best phone. They care because it's Apple, and they care because it's something that they connect to.
Connect with. Yeah.
So I'm thinking with this, with the contribution being a basic need, I think comes back to the basic need of belonging to a community. How back in, I don't have any a university degree in humankind history, but this is what people have been telling us, that we used to belong in tribes that are up to 150 people, where we have a clear view of what our status is in those tribes as well. And by contributing to the community, I can increase or secure my place in the tribe and ensure my safety as a person. So I think it's that's the basic need. But in designing events, I think we can think about how we can, instead of just focusing on pushing the content out, we can start designing for participation, so we can help people think about and feel safe if they contribute. So I think we also, when events say that you're welcome to contribute, you're welcome to ask a question, but we always say, okay, but what happens if I do? Will
Yeah.
my input be valued? Will I stand out? Will I be weird? Will I sound stupid, or will I sound uninformed? So sometimes, if you're asking for a contribution or participation, it could also be felt like a risk. And so the key then is to make people feel safe. And that has to be worked on from a long time before, I think. You create the community even when you invite people to the event, to state a clear purpose and make people understand that sometimes actually you can be a little bit tougher to say that you expect contribution. That is not exceptional, but it's actually part of this event, that everyone will be expected to contribute. And also that nothing bad will happen when they speak up.
I
So
completely resonate with these points as well, and it's not spoken about enough, like regarding the broadcast versus, like the channel being thought of as a broadcast system. Events are,
yes.
like you said, yeah, like for a product launch, there's a bit of a disconnect. Maybe if it is actually a product launch, okay, that makes sense. But sometimes in the B2B space, we see people forcing that concept into an event where it shouldn't, like it should be more where people participate with each other, talk to each other. And what I think you're getting at as well, and what I'm trying to grasp, because there's a lot going on in this topic, is that you should de-risk. You feel there's a risk, right? But our job as event planners, or to facilitate a good discussion, we should de-risk it. We set a bit of an expectation, like before this call as well, right? We shared some questions. We kind of expected we were going to talk about it, but we keep it casual as well and tell all opinions are welcome. It's not really a negative criticism going on here. It's just a bit of discussion and proactive learning for each other.
Change, right?
Perspective exactly changes. What's your experience with events, like historically? Like, have you yourself attended loads of events, and have you seen this being a core part, or do you think the industry should develop this a lot more?
I think both. It's like you say, sometimes we call them internal, my colleagues and I, we sometimes call them popcorn events. It might as well be something that you go to the cinema to watch, that you sit somewhere comfortably with someone you like next to you, and you have your popcorn and you just watch the content. They can be fun as well, just like an entertaining, just like a movie can be entertaining. But I think in order for, is exactly what you say, that what we're after as a brand, if I'm a brand wanting to connect with my audience, with my participants, stakeholders, suppliers, whoever they are, I need them to be engaged. And in order to get there, we need to interact. And in order for them to actually give honest and authentic interaction, we come back to this again. They need to feel safe. So I've been in the events industry since, 2008. I started out with streaming and did streaming for a long time. And during the Corona pandemic in Sweden, it wasn't as locked down as it was in the UK. So we actually managed to do a few events as long as we didn't have as too many people in the same room at the same time. But when it was very nice to see how the digital events changed, because they changed from being strictly one way, one, because the technology didn't exist really to do good interaction, and then people started learning about the tools and how they work, and also the tools evolved. Everyone threw money into making Microsoft Teams better. Zoom came out. There were hundreds of tools, and all of the digital events just spiked, and people found ways of doing the interaction in a digital way, like we can now. This is fantastic, I think. And there were a few towards the end towards the end of the pandemic, I'd say the last 6 months, maybe 3/4 of a year, maybe, I started seeing many events where people actually did feel that they were a part of the event. That's why, so my favorite idea about good events is when I go to a good event, I can tell afterwards that it made a difference that I was there. That it made a difference to the event itself, but also to the other people that attended the event, that it wouldn't have been the same without me. That to me is a valuable and a good and an event that it would embrace contribution. Yeah.
If I also reflect a bit on this point, because as marketeers, I think what happens is we get a bit too caught up in the content, like that it should be so relevant, it has to be so pain point focused, that we just forget that I think people just want to talk as well. And what about the structure? What about the process to just make it so simple for them to talk, digest information? Because what's also important is after event, if you ask maybe, I don't know, out of the 20 people, you ask 10 people what was spoken about. You're like, maybe the food was great, or I met that person. Maybe one or two of them are like, yeah, I learned something, or I actually got a chance to speak and talk about XYZ topic.
Hmm.
Those are really the golden nuggets, like those are the people that I think got a chance to really remember such an event as well, because most would forget the food and will just say that, yeah, I remember that venue. But would they remember the event itself? How many people they met? Those that got a chance to contribute versus those that didn't. The ones that did would obviously remember the
Right.
event a lot more.
And imagine even a company that invites participants to have an impact on the product or the service that they sell. that they're looking for input. They're looking for the ideas from the stakeholders of doing things in a better way. But that takes courage as well by whoever creates the event
Yeah.
to open up for that. And I mean, I think everyone who is in business for anything, they understand that even if my client has an idea about how to make our product better, I'm super open and welcoming to their idea, but it doesn't mean that it's in use. But as long as and this is key as well, I think, and we might come back to this later, that if they contribute, if they give me feedback, then it's really important that I show them that I listen, that I value their idea or their contribution, and then give some kind of feedback. Thank you. I've seen it. It was very welcome. Please keep them coming, because there's a lot of events where, and maybe I'm jumping to another question now, but there's a lot of events where people say that, oh, we're open for questions. We'll take questions the last 5 minutes of this slot. And then maybe you have an event app, or maybe people are raising the example is better when, if there's an event app or a digital way to submit your question and you do, and then the question is never raised, and then if that happens, then you've just lost me. Then I will never ask a question again, and nor will anyone else, because we notice that it doesn't matter if we do contribute.
You feel
So it's
ignored.
really important, this piece of giving. I don't have a good word for it, but just giving evidence of that, your contribution happened. We saw it. We didn't have time for it now, but we saw it and we'll respond to you right after.
That is like a big gap a lot of event marketeers don't even think about, because really it is the like, especially, I'm not talking about small virtual panels here or one-to-one discussions, but in like a webinar where there's possibly 30, 50 people. I think only 10% of those actually top questions are given that, or maybe 20%. I'm just throwing a number, but it's the minority. That's what,
Yes.
the minority get that priority, but the rest are not really given that importance. And we don't know what happens to that engagement, even. Like, is it taken seriously? What happens after? You raise an excellent point on that. And those brands, like, talk to me a bit about, like those brands that actually host these events. The better engagement you do, the better brand recognition you get as well. Like, if you focus on a lot of brand recognition, then you'd want to get more engagement in these events. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yes, of course. I mean, it takes more courage, like I said, because it's easier. Everyone does that. All of us, we want to control our environment. We want to control everything as much as possible. And it takes courage to open up, just go with the flow and go unscripted. When companies do open up, when they show that they're authentic in wanting to listen, I really do think that, but you have to be consistent in this as well. It's kind of a compounding thing. You open up and you say you open up, and then you accept incoming contribution, you accept participation from your stakeholders. And then when you show evidence, then people will come back to ask questions again. Back in the classroom when you were at school, the person who was first to be brave enough to raise their hand and ask the question, they're usually the person asking questions the whole class.
Yeah, that's an
And
excellent
and
example.
for me, I was never the first guy, but I might have done it. I was maybe the second half of the class, and then I would dare raise my hand. But after the first one, I would go off more times because I feel that it's not so bad. I was okay. I was safe. And I think that this will happen. So in the marketing business, I think this is what you need to work on, to keep on showing that you actually listen. And it's really, and even not only listen, that you think is important, that is vital.
Yes.
It's vital for us to understand what you, our customers, think about us, how you like us to approach you, and how you want us to talk to you. That's super important.
We don't change from that time in school till now. We think we've grown up and we change so much. Some psychological aspects of us just kind of almost remain the same, maybe.
Yes.
Like, for example, like when you're in an event or attending something, and you ask the first question, it kind of is like an icebreaker
Yes.
inside your mind. It feels like, that you can go into the conversation a lot easier the next time. The next time something comes up. Excellent point, Johan. And
And
um,
I think it's interesting what you do. There's a big future in the small scale events
yes,
where you can pinpoint people to say, and when it's harder to hide, when if you're in an audience of 400 people, then it's easy to not raise your hand, even if you have a
very
digital way of contributing. But in a small scale event of, I don't know, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, like in a classroom, slightly bigger than a classroom, it's easy to see as the event organizer, it's easy to see, okay, who's had their time in the spotlight and who hasn't. So how can we, because maybe the right way of finding a way to interact with everyone is not the same. Maybe for one person it is to speak loudly in the room.
yeah.
Uh, for another, it might not be. Or maybe they're easier of digesting the information first and then write something down in an email because they want to feel that they have a structure in their feedback. So we need to have different ways of
Incorporate
input.
personality and allow that basic difference of how people process that information in events. It's
Yes.
not just fixed that someone comes in, everyone raises their hand first and wants to speak first. That's not the best way, but it just goes to show that eventually someone, you should want to speak, you should want to contribute, even if it's minor. That's your personality. You talk less, but you
Yes.
did say something. You expressed and gave your opinion.
Right,
So,
because
yeah.
so imagine if I were the one that didn't want to raise my hand in the
Yeah.
classroom or at the event,
Yeah.
and I prefer to give my feedback in an email afterwards, and the event organizer will come back to me. Maybe they'll give me a call to say, "Hey, Johan, I really appreciated your input here. It's super valuable. Can we talk more about this at the next event?" And then they bring it up at the next event to say, "Johan had a really good event, good idea. He emailed us about. So let's talk about this a little bit more." And then, you keep on, and this does many things. This does the opening up the second time with the authenticity from me as the organizer. It also does the compounding thing of showing everyone else that this company actually listens. They actually care
Yes.
about our ideas, and which will influence everyone else to start contributing more as well. So yeah, that will have a snowball effect.
That's excellent. I absolutely agree with all of those points. Lastly, I did have a question, one or two books you referenced. So
Yes.
regarding this, if you want to just elaborate briefly on those pieces, how did those lead to your inspiration for this post and talking about this subject?
Right. So I referenced a couple of books. The main idea from this post was from a book called The Courage to be Disliked,
Yes.
which is it's two Japanese authors. So the psychologist Adler, he had a lot of ideas. He worked in the same space and time as Sigmund Freud, and he had a completely different view of what motivates people and how people work. And what stuck with me, so there are a couple of things in the book, but what stuck with me and what relates to the events is this core thing of wanting to contribute, and that this is a basic need of humans. And we will feel more fulfilled as a human when we do, and also this whole thing about securing your place in the community and thereby securing your future, really, and survival. So that's one. The other book is, I lost it right now, is by Priya Parker. And Priya Parker has written a book about how we gather, and she has a really good structure about how we're gathering or how we can create the best and design the best gatherings. That is not about finding a flashy venue with good food and, like you say, with the some, I don't know, some dancers and some hip music. It's not about that. It's about curating the whole way. You curate who's going to be in the room. You curate the room so that you choose the room so that it fits the purpose. And the
Oh,
purpose, of course, is the core. You start with the purpose of why you're even doing the event, because everything has to have a purpose. It could be, it doesn't have to be super complex, but there's always something that you want to influence. You want to influence the direction of people's opinion. You want to, you can say that you want to promote your product, but it's more that you want for people to learn about your product. And
Learn, yeah.
And then you design around who's going to be in the room, how you should prime and prepare people before they come into the room. This to me has been the real eye opener after joining Ventla. So, which I did 3 years ago, is thinking about what happens between the invitation and the actual event. That's pretty much the whole thing. It's a bit like when you're, performing at the Olympics. It doesn't happen when you're at the Olympics. It happens before,
Yeah,
when you do the mental training, the physical training. So it's the same at events, where we need to let people understand why they've been invited and what's
yeah,
going
yeah.
to happen at the event. And then what's your role at the event, and who are the others at the event, and what are we expecting from you, that from now on until the first day of the event, then these things will happen. And a lot of good events that I see, they start a communications plan in between the invitation. After I've registered, then a communications plan start, that I will be drop fed with information. Maybe there's a podcast that I should listen to. Maybe not a book, but a podcast, something nice and easy to digest.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe there's a video from someone at the company that I should watch about something. Maybe just explaining that we're so happy to see you here. We hope that we will create something amazing together when we meet. And then do a pre-check, super short survey, a pre-check before going into the event, because after the event, we want to create a survey after the event as well, so we can measure how much did we affect anything? Did we
Right.
change the direction somehow? Yeah. So because that's a whole other topic, the
It
thing
is,
with
yeah.
post-event surveys. I've seen post-event surveys with 40 questions, and they get like 3-4% response rate. But it's this thing again with control. We want to control everything, and so we want responses to everything. But we actually want is just these few key questions. So make it so that it's easy to just respond within 40 seconds or something, and tell that to people, we need 40 seconds of your time, just blip blop in the survey, and then that's it. And then you
Absolutely.
do the same after as well, so had something happened at this event or not.
Johan from a Ventla, an event platform for better engagement. So you should check that out as well. It was exceptional getting to know you.